Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Radiant Living podcast with myself, Melanie Dean. And I am very excited this week because I am joined by one of my most beautiful friends, Jessica Klasnick. And we have known each other for a few years now. And we actually met through our Kundalini Yoga teacher training, and that was quite a week, let me tell you. And in that week, we really had the beautiful opportunity of creating this, what I feel is like a wonderful friendship. And although I'm from the UK and she's from the US, we've kept in touch all of this time and happened to be able to visit each other as well in between. So thank you so much, Jess, for joining us on the Radiant Living podcast.
Mel, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
Oh, thank you. So I've got so many questions for Jess because I have the honor of knowing Jess and getting to know Jess over these last few years, and I think she's what she does and what she's created in her life and continues to create. It just blows me away and it blows my mind. She is definitely the epitome of taking a rule book, looking at it and thinking, nah, and throwing it away, and deciding and creating a life that she wants based on what's best for her, her partner, and her family. And I love how you guys do that all together. So, yeah, let's just start off with a little bit about your story before you had these big changes in your life. So, what was life look like before you decided to throw away this imaginary rule book that we all sort of end up reading off?
Yeah, so we were living pretty much the American dream. I had been married to my husband, Matt, for about 13 years at that point. We had three boys. They were 4, 6, and 8. Matt worked on Wall Street. He had a job in a Fortune 500 company. And I was a stay-at-home mom, and my kids went to soccer and baseball. They took piano lessons. We took vacations. We bought new cars. And what happened, Mel, was we sat down and we started saying, gosh, we literally have gotten all of these things we wanted. Like, we checked the box for all of these things that society told us we should want. And we were sitting there feeling very unfulfilled. So we went through this whole process of like, are we just ungrateful? Like, we should be happy. Why are we not happy?
Right.
And that's when Matt and I decided it was just time to reprioritize all the conditioning, all of the things that society told us we should want, and sit down and really figure out, what do we want? What's important to us as a family? What's important in our marriage? What's important in our careers? And we basically started over.
Ah, I love that. And so was there one thing that happened, or was it just a gradual thing that you just over time you started to think, actually, we've created everything that on the outside would be the tick box of everything that you think, you need to do to feel happy and fulfilled. When was it like a light bulb moment, or was it was just over time something just wasn't feeling in alignment
Yeah,
maybe?
it was more over time. There was like no, I can't pinpoint one specific night where we sat down. It was just this feeling of not being fulfilled, being grateful for what we had, but knowing that we were made for more. We wanted more. There was like a misalignment of our life with the things that were important to us. So, for example, one of the very first things we decided was that we needed more time together as a family. And it's funny we say this now, we're in COVID now. So everybody's had plenty of time together with each other. But this was 4 years ago, right? We were all running a million miles a minute in sports. My husband traveled Monday through Friday for work. So we saw him for 48 hours on the weekend. And we said, gosh, family is our top priority here, and we're not seeing each other. So how can we change that? And that was our first step, was deciding, number one, we want more time together as a family. Number two, how can we get it? So we literally wrote down a list of like 30 things we could do to see each other more. Maybe Matt would quit his job and get a job that didn't, cause him to travel. Maybe I would start working and he would stay home with the kids. Maybe we had all of these maybes of ideas. And eventually, what we decided to do was to homeschool our kids and travel with Matt. So every Monday, he would go to the airport and we would tag along with him. He would go to his work meetings in all these amazing cities in the United States, like San Francisco and Seattle. And while he was doing that, I would homeschool the boys. And when he would have breaks in the day, we would see each other. And when he would get off, in the evenings, we would go out to dinners and explore together. So that was the very first step we took in kind of realigning our values with the way we wanted to lead our life.
I love everything that you just said then. I love the fact that you really owned how you were feeling, because I think there's a lot of people that they do feel like that people that they're stood upon, oh, you should feel grateful, you should be happy for what
Yeah.
you've got. And that's all well and good, but it's how we're feeling on the inside. And again, we're being conscious of not living by other people's standards or beliefs, or from different generations. Our parents' generations very different. When my parents grew up, it's like, be grateful for what you've got, count your blessings. But our
Yeah.
generation, and certainly the generation after us, they're like, actually, no, I want to pave the way in a life that feels true to me, and not what feels true to a system or to someone else on the street or the neighbors next door or whoever. So I love that you did
Yeah.
that. And I love that you came together and did a bit of a brainstorming session, because you started with the idea, didn't you, that you wanted to spend more time together, but you didn't.
Mhm.
Again, you were being very general of how it was going to look. You knew what you wanted, and then I like the idea that you were open to how that was going to happen.
Yeah, very much so. And I think what's so important about that, Mel, is that when you're starting to figure this stuff out, just figure out what you want. So oftentimes people decide on what they want by if they know how to get there, right?
Right.
So if they
Oh,
don't know how to
definitely.
get there, then we're not going to go after that. But
Yeah.
instead, let's flip it around. Let's decide what we want and let's brainstorm all the odd ways it could happen. One thing I didn't even mention at first was one of the things we thought we would do was do an RV trip while he was traveling for work and try to like live in an RV and be with him. And we would drive from spot to spot for his meetings. And we did that eventually, but not in that situation. So we brainstormed all of the wildest and craziest ideas. But truly, the first step is just saying, what is it that you want? And I love what you said about how our generation and the generation after us is going to do it different, because I was not ungrateful. I was grateful for
Yeah, right.
everything we had. I was so grateful, in fact, that I used it to decide what else I wanted,
Right.
right? I wasn't using it in spite of myself. I was saying, well, now what else can I do? Now that I've created this and I've gotten all of these things, like what more? How can I
Yeah.
be a better mom and a wife and better serve my community? And I think when we use that gratitude, it can propel us in so many major ways.
100 million%. This is why me and you are
Yeah.
friends. We're just,
Yeah, I
just
know. Right.
yes, boom, yes, yes. I'm just like nodding away here. I know this is a
Right.
podcast, and people listening can't see me, but I'm like, mm-hmm, yeah, yeah. Yeah, gratitude. That's the amplifier,
Mhm.
isn't it? And yeah, yeah, I completely 100% understand what you're saying. And to me, like this morning, so it's just coming up to midday here in Oz, but this morning I've been to the beach, had my coffee on the beach, had a swim, and I'm like, this is what I visualized for so long. And it's just I remind myself every day to be so grateful. And I would say that to people listening in, think what you already have now that you once desired. Maybe someone listening in maybe desired to have a baby, and they've got a beautiful little baby or child. It's remembering what we said that we wanted, and being in gratitude for that. But I love what you said, because that to me is the epitome of that growth mindset. I'm grateful, but I know I'm here to create more, to be more, not necessarily do more, but be more, be more amplified in the essence of who you are in this lifetime.
Absolutely.
I love that.
100% Mel.
And I love that you said that your top tip is to sort of let go of the how. Like I've written how, on my notes and put a line through it. Like just forget the how, right? Completely.
Yeah.
So then you decided, sort of fast forward maybe a few months, you decided to take a trip around the world for a year. Is-
Yeah, so we traveled with Matt actually for about a year like that. So I would homeschool the boys on the road. And at that point, I think he got to spend more time with us. And I think he realized all the things that he was missing. And we had been saving our money for about 10 years. And we had just put money away really diligently every month, not knowing what it was for, just saying maybe we'd buy a business one day or get a bigger house. We didn't really know what it was for. But when I brought up the idea of traveling with him, he couldn't wrap his head around it. I said, honey, I think it would be fun if you decided to leave your job and we used the money in our savings and we took a trip around the world. And he's like, what? I've never thought of that in my life. We're too young. I'm at the top of my career. How could we ever do that? That's our savings. That's not what savings are for. And the more we sat down and we thought about it, our kids were at the perfect age to enjoy something like that.
Mm.
He could always get another job he loved. And we really wanted to experience different ways of living. We wanted to show our kids new cultures, and we wanted to travel together as a family and be together. So he decided to step away from his big job and use our savings to take a trip around the world for almost a year. We had 22 stops over the course of our travels. And literally, we started in New York and ended up in Sydney. So we took a trip around the world.
Amazing. And am I right in thinking that you all got to choose one place that you would love to go to, and that was kind of like the pinpoints of where you would go? Is that right?
It's so funny that you remember that, Mel. People like think this is hilarious because everyone's like, well, how did you plan where to go? Like you're
Mm.
taking a trip around the world. And we were a family of five. So everybody in our family got to pick one place in the world we wanted to go. So my 6-year-old at the time, we live in Colorado. He was like, I want to go to New York City. So, we hit New York City up first, which was great. My middle guy picked Paris. My oldest son picked Japan. My
Oh, wow.
husband picked an RV trip in New Zealand, and I picked Australia. So,
Yay!
yeah, we mapped those out and then we just connected the dots and
Mm.
filled in with a couple other places in between. And that's how we made it very simple. It wasn't complicated. It took us about 2 weeks to plan the entire trip and we were ready to go.
Amazing, absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. And of course, the times that we're in right now, I mean, Australia, our international borders are completely closed, although we're very free within the country. But the UK, they've been on kind of a lockdown on and off for a year. So, this isn't maybe something they can consider doing right now, but it's definitely something for the future. But also, I think for me, what I realized with everything that I've done and created is that how my energy is towards one thing can be created with everything I do. So someone might be listening now and thinking, oh, I actually don't want to travel with my family. We love being at home, but it's the energy and it's the steps in manifesting. It's you had an idea, you let go of the how, you just took each step at a time. You didn't try to figure out the exact way of doing everything. So, if in terms of that manifesting like a goal or a desire, because obviously you're a life coach and you work with so many women and, really incredibly, talented and powerful women, and you work with those women. So is there anything that you find that is a real good tip for people? Because this podcast has tended to be guided towards manifestation and meditation. So what would you say is really good for people, helping people create a dream or reality, a different reality, let's say?
Yeah. I think that whenever you're wanting to create something, you have to really be willing to think outside of the box about how it's going to come to you. right? So after we took this trip around the world, we then went on to sell everything we've owned and we moved into a condo in the mountains for 2 years. And then we ended up going on an RV trip for a month and we lived in a small RV. And then my husband got a job in Costa Rica. So I would say if I had really honed in on like, okay, I want to do this, this, and this, it wouldn't have come in the ways that I would have wanted, and it would have been very disappointing. So
Mm.
I say, set yourself up for success. Just decide the big picture of what you want, brainstorm all the ways that it could happen, and then be open to it happening. So oftentimes we'll actually get all the things that we want in our life, but because they don't look like a very specific way of how we wanted it to look, we don't take the opportunity. We'll say, no, thank you. Or we'll say, that's not what I was expecting. But
Mm.
if we're open to it and we're ready to allow however it's going to happen into our life, it will happen much quicker and it will be really exciting and probably even better than we could have planned it in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I am sure this has happened with you, but have you had any sort of haters, let's call them, or, when you made these decisions and you decided, because it's very different, to probably what your friends were doing and family had ever done. Was that challenging with, hearing different people's opinions, or were people just really supportive and were like, yeah, go for it?
I mean, you would like to say that everybody's supportive, but it's not. Anytime you're doing something that's outside of the societal standards of what we all should be doing, people are not going to agree. And I always look at that as being okay. I'm definitely allowed to lead my life how I want, and they're definitely allowed to lead their life how they want. I remember I got a particular email when we were traveling in the RV, and it was during the middle of the pandemic. And he didn't like that we were doing it. He said it felt ucky. He felt that we were selfish. And I so appreciated that he shared that conversation and those feelings with me. It was somebody that I was a friend with. I cared about their opinion, but I also was allowed to tell him that I didn't agree. And I think so oftentimes in culture and society nowadays, we feel like because we disagree with someone, that's a problem. And I don't think that. I think that I can love somebody, I can respect their opinions, and we can think different things. So for me, I actually sometimes will gauge if what I'm doing is right, if it's a little different, or if I'm getting a little bit of rub from people. One thing that totally stands out is when Matt left his job on Wall Street. My dad was like, what? He's leaving this job that you guys worked so hard for. And I was like, good. Like, my dad should have that reaction. I see why he thinks it's really weird that we're doing this. But we felt so convicted and so strong with the choices that we were making that we were okay with him having a difference of opinion. Oftentimes, people get frustrated when someone doesn't agree with them because they're not entirely sure of their decision and they need everybody else to validate it. When you don't need that validation, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. I find myself speaking about this a lot. I think it was literally my first podcast, and I mentioned about everything's really perception, and
Yeah.
there's this one situation, and it's not right and it's not wrong, but everyone's going to be looking at it from a different angle, from a different point of view, based on their upbringing, based on their beliefs. And I love that you say that because I think sometimes this might even be a British thing, but I'm sure it's a global thing. But we get into that sort of people pleasing, and we think, oh, if someone doesn't agree with us, or if someone's a bit sort of miffed, I think that might be a British word, a bit
Yeah.
like upset, a bit upset with us. It's
Right.
we should change and we should immediately apologize. And oh well, I didn't mean it. Oh, it's just a lot of, and it takes so much energy. It's exhausting, isn't it? It can be so exhausting to just try and tick everybody else's boxes. And ultimately, certainly what I've learned is that while you're trying to please everyone else, you please nobody, and least of all, you please yourself. And that
Yeah.
path of destiny that was granted to you in this lifetime, you're not even following. You're not following the truth of what feels good for you, and it's just it's just not good. It's not healthy, is it, mentally or physically? I think it can show up in other ways, but that lack of alignment then, because you're trying to align with what everyone else wants, it's a lot of energy, isn't it?
Yeah, I work a lot on this with my coaching clients because
Mm,
we'll see this in so many different aspects of our life, Mel. We'll see it in relationships we have with our, spouses or people that we're dating. We'll see this in friendships. We'll see this in our work environment that because we're trying to please everyone else, we're not satisfied with what
mm,
we're doing. And particularly with women, we tend
mm,
to get resentful. We tend to get angry. We put on a happy face. We say everything's fine. But the minute our husband goes on a guy's trip for the weekend, we're pissed off because we don't do things like that for ourselves.
right.
Or the minute a friend of ours decides she's going to quit living in London and England and go to Bali, we get frustrated because we want to do that and we've never realized that dream for ourselves.
Mm,
So it's a really important thing to focus on, and I think it's something that's so important for like the evolution of women, for
mm,
women to really come into what they want and to be okay with having it. I
mm,
love that I have a successful business, that I homeschool my three boys. I have a healthy marriage with my husband for 17 years. And I have a great group of friends, a meditation. I'm like not ashamed of any of this. And I want all of this for all women. And I don't want anybody to be ashamed that they have it and that they desire for it. Gone are the days where we have to be humble and sit in the almost in the rhetoric of, oh, it's okay, I don't need that, or I'll just stay at home and do all of the things I should be doing as a good wife. Like it doesn't have to look like that anymore if we don't want it to.
100%. And I always think about that quote. It's very simple, but it's, don't dim your sparkle for someone else.
Right.
Sometimes I consider, when I'm on Instagram and I'm putting photographs of the beach and, we've got this very free life in a global pandemic that Australia's sort of not had that same experience as the rest of the world. And I think, gosh, shall I put these photographs? But then I get so many messages saying, Mel, thank you so much for posting these beautiful photographs. It gives me hope, it gives me energy. I love it. It really feeds me. And the people that don't like seeing it, because I probably wouldn't want to see it if I was in the UK, then, they don't have to look. But ultimately, like, you hold your energy. And I mean, that's a very kind of, very small and petty example of what you're saying. But it's just, you live in your life and not diminishing your needs and your desires to please other people, which I think is, I loved everything that you said about that. And
Exactly.
just to add that, because I feel that you've got this so much inner strength that, because as much as we all want to think, I don't care what my parents say or the neighbors say or friends say, but deep down we're like kind of do sometimes. How do you hold that inner strength? Is it just come from over the years, and or is it the work that you've done, or I'm guessing like through Kundalini yoga as well?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you asked this because my husband and Matt and I talk about this a lot. And it's not that I don't care what other people say. Like, I love my friends and my
Mm,
family, and I value their opinions,
mm,
but I have the self confidence in
yeah,
myself to know what's best. I don't put my future, I don't put my decisions in anybody else's hands. And that's something I've learned over the years. It's a
mm,
process I go through with all of the decisions that I'm making, with
mm,
everything that I do, and I've developed it. So now it's a little more second nature.
yeah,
But I think we have to be willing to decide what we believe and decide what we want and be okay owning that. And I
yeah.
think that's a really important step in my process. I mean, I can't tell you when Matt took a job in Costa Rica and my friends found out he was leaving me here with the kids by myself, they were so mad at him. Nobody wanted Matt to go to Costa Rica, but I had no problem with it. I was so happy that I could support him in going after his dream job.
Yeah.
And that's a place that we want to be, where we're so confident in ourselves that we can then support other people in their dreams and
Mm.
going after what they want.
100%. I think that's one of my biggest lessons and powerful journey that I've been on. Yet really getting to know myself and honoring myself. And once you know who you are and what you're about, you can unapologetically be you and be unapologetic about the decisions because you know that they're part of the you on your best path, on your best journey. So I love that. Thank you. So what is in store
Yeah,
now
Mel,
for? Oh, go on. Sorry.
I was just going to say one more thing on that I think is interesting is I also make so many mistakes and I'm okay with it. None
Mm,
of this is done with an air of perfection or I'm always going to make a right decision. I would say with all of the decisions we've talked about with us leaving, Wall Street, traveling the world, there were like three mishaps in between of things we
was.
thought would work and didn't or
Yeah.
ways we thought it would be and it wasn't. And I'm so okay with that. That didn't
Yeah.
mean we weren't meant to do it. It didn't mean, it just means we made the wrong decision and we pivoted to a new one.
Mm.
So I think that's really important is that in every success or everything that looks like it's so great, there were like 10 times I fell on my face in between and I'm totally okay with falling on my face.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that because that is such an important point to make, and I think it's sometimes it's easy to forget what you might have been through or gone through to create what you created, and like you say, yeah, that ride to get there to do all the things that you've done 100%. Like I know I shared with you on another call that I made a decision that, oh, I'm moving to New Zealand, and I told everyone I'm moving to New Zealand, and then I booked a flight to New Zealand and I spent 10 days in New Zealand, and I came home and I was like, nope, I'm not moving to New Zealand, that's not for me. It's beautiful, but it's not for me. And I would tell everyone, oh, I'm going to get my visa to live in the US. I lived in LA for a few months, I loved it, I'm going to apply for a visa. And I just talk things out loud. Like that's just my personality. I love telling everyone this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing next, and just seeing how it lands. But there's so many things that
Yeah.
just weren't right, and definitely mistakes I've made. And even in the things that have been right, like sometimes it's been challenging. Like when I first moved to Australia, I didn't realize that I thought I'd have a room, and I didn't have a room. I didn't have a room for about a month. And so that was tricky and challenging and figuring all that out. And um, yeah, everything looks so beautiful and perfect sometimes through social media, through Instagram, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that happens in between those steps. So thank you. That's such a valid point. Thank you so much. So just to
Yeah.
sort of wrap up, what are you guys doing now? So tell us a little bit about what Matt's doing and where you guys are, and do you have any like things that you want to share with us about what you're creating that might inspire people listening, and especially people listening who are feeling that the the challenges of lockdown and the pandemic. Is there anything that you're up to that might inspire people with the next few months?
Yeah, well, last year we were living in the mountains. We had kind of sold everything we owned and we were living in a two-bedroom condo. We kind of, I would say it was like minimalist lifestyle. And we decided that we wanted to split some time between the mountains and the city in Colorado. So we bought a townhome in the city. So right now we're splitting time between the two of those. And when all that was coming into fruition, we had said, eventually we want to be on the beach too, like mountain, city, beach. That would be wonderful. And we figured that would happen in about 3 years. And an opportunity came up for Matt in Costa Rica. And so he was down there working for 2 months. He's back here now and he's just like exploring, knowing we want to be in Costa Rica. We want to be in a beach. How is this going to happen? How is it going to come into our life? And we're just open to that happening any way it can. So I will say, like, we're in the thick of it right now. We're not, we don't, have all the things we want. We're working through it. So for anybody that's listening, I would just say, as you're sitting home, as the world is starting to open up in so many places, think about what it is that you want. What are some of the things that you learned during this pandemic that you may have not learned had it not happened? Maybe it was that you don't want your kids being in after school sports every day after school. So instead of having them in soccer and football, you cut out one of those so that you can have family dinners. Maybe you learned that you and your husband like sleeping in on Sundays together without a bunch of things to do, and you commit to making that happen moving forward. It's these everyday little things that you discover about yourself that will open up to some of the bigger things that you want. So pay attention to those and start moving into the direction of having those things in your life more often.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just to pick out that one sentence, pay attention, or two words, pay attention. I love that.
Yes.
Pay attention.
Pay
Pay
attention.
attention. Ooh,
Yep.
ooh, pay attention. Oh, thank you so much, Jess. Honestly, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and still just be happy,
Me
happy,
too.
happy. So maybe we'll do that on the
Me
beach one
too.
day together. We'll put that out there. But thank you so much
That'll
for
happen.
joining us. Yeah, thank you so much for joining on the podcast. So if people want to connect with you and just learn more about what you do and just hear your frequency and your vibe through Instagram, like how can they find you? Where do they go?
Yeah. So if anybody wants to read more just about our family story and what we did, our website for that is recalculatinghappiness.com. If anybody just needs, somebody to hold hands with them if they're trying to make some big changes in their life, and one-on-one coaching would be helpful for them. I'm a women's life coach, and you can get more information on that at Jessica Klasnick, KLASNICK.com. And I'm on Instagram at Recalculating Happiness. So lots of different ways to kind of peek in and out and see what we're up to.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time and thank you for sharing. It's been incredible to hear everything that you've shared with us. It's been amazing. Thank you so much. And just to remind everybody who's listening, if you feel called to give us a 5-star review, that would be very, very welcomed. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, you can connect with me at radiantliving__ or at Melanie J. Dean. And also feel free to pop over to my website, melaniejddean.com, and you can sign up for a beautiful sunrise meditation that I did, manifesting meditation, with a beautiful Bondi Beach sunrise to watch as well. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you again, Jess, and I look forward to connecting with you all next week. Thank you, Jess. Bye.